ho, ho, ho. I'll bring them back in a bit. My name is Quinlan. Welcome to Melbourne Musos Facebook Live on a Footy Friday. Oh! And, the town is a little bit of a buzz and all that stuff. Beautiful. Tonight, I'm going to talk about layers. Anyone who's a Melbourneian knows about layers. We can have 4 seasons in one day. We can go from hot to cold to everything else. So this is what we're doing here tonight. Layers. All right. Now let me get straight into it. I got my mallets. I've got everything here. I'm going to be using lots of different things. And the patches that I've got are my little pizzicato cello patches. And so it's a little bit on the classical side. And what I've got is the Dorian mode, which is, I'll put it here or there. And it's when you're talking about straight into harmony, the first, the second, the flat third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the flat seventh, and the octave. It's a bit like a light minor. And the Dorian mode is the second step of the major scale. God, I've gone heavy early, haven't I? And I've got all the triggers. Ooh. And then what I want to do tonight is just talk about the layers. Now, there's a single stroke roll. There's the hi-hat lightly splashing with a little light splash. My drum kitchen rules. A little light splash. Could have done with a pinch of salt. I give you a pause for a dramatic effect. A 4. You're shit out of luck. But what we've got, my drum set rules. Doris! What happens is what you want to be able to do is mix up your layers. Mix up your dynamics, being able to do different things, and the things you hit the drums with. There you go. Now, as you can tell here, good old single stroke roll. If it was on a 1 to 10 basis, I'd be doing a 3, which is a bit like piano. I'll get to that in a minute. But then I'll mix it up. Change to a different drum. Ooh. And what happens there is that comes from a book that I put up just the other week. So I didn't bring it along, but George Stone's Stick Control. Because I've been going on about that a little bit over the last few episodes. Continuity is my name. Danger is my middle... No, anyway. But what it is, get all your mixed sticking. Now, paradiddles rule with mixed sticking. Hello, Fluff. Haven't seen you for a while. So what happens is you've got your single stroke roll, double stroke roll, paradiddle. That's a double. And just on the humble practice pad, you want to be able to try and keep it as even as you can. And then there's a little thing that I call natural accents, because I might not change what I'm playing as far as dynamics, soft or loud. I'm mixing it all up. But the simple act of changing drums, right? Now, because I've got triggers, there's a threshold. see, so off we go. So there's the gradual, what we call the crescendo. Okay, from soft to loud, gradually getting louder. If you're doing a decrescendo, you're going from loud to soft. So we're talking a bit about dynamics and that kind of thing. There you go. Now, when I'm talking about things like this, when I look at a snare drum, I'm just not looking at one thing. I tend to look at it like that. And I tend to explain it like, it's almost like an on-screen display, if you know what I mean. So when I'm actually talking about these kinds of things, I've already mentioned George Stone's stick control and how important it can be in both a practical and possible sense. You see, the other week I was talking about practicalities. What happens if you're doing a calypso beat? And it requires you playing the accents just on one cymbal. You can't really go, You can't do it. That's the continuity part I was talking about. That last week or the week before, it all becomes a blur. A wonderful blur. Anyway, but when you've got this, now I can see it up and down, up and down, up and down. Now if that's 1 to 10, there's three main things. If we're just going to talk soft, medium and loud, soft is 3, you know, that kind of thing. Piano means soft. 5 is medium or moderato, and then 7 is forte. Every time you add an extra F, it's a very. Every time you add an extra P, it's a very. So it works in inverse. So if you've got soft, it's a P, and that's on 3. And if you're doing PP, it's very, very soft, okay? And it gets softer. But if you get forte, which is loud, and then you go FF, what happens is it becomes very loud, you see. So it works in inverse, you see. Just add the extra P's or the F's. And that's what goes on there. And you've got your markings. And I sort of see it, like I said, an on-screen display. You see, there you go. Three Stooges. God help me. Where's this show going? Anyway, what's going on? Then you pick your weapon. And what happens then is I've got the trusty swizzle sticks, or I should call them multi-sticks. And with the tips. And then you've got layers on your snare drum. You've got your normal sound, just accent, rim shot. And there you have it, you see. Bang. And what happens then is you've got a sharp attack, because at least I use wooden tips. And even if you want a little bit more crisper, you use a nylon tip. I tend to use wood tips though. And then what happens then is you've got a fairly sharp attack. If you're using the mallet end, this is a bit of a hard mallet. You see? So that's what got it. Turn it around, same thing. Snares. Ooh! See? And what I'm dealing with now is attack. Now, when you're actually studying things like synthesizers and all this sort of biz, there's a thing called ADSR you want to get into. Back in the days of the Rick Wakemans and the Keith Emersons, where they'd have the Moog synthesizer, or Moog, depending on whatever. But what goes on is you would program the sound yourself. These days you just press a button and away you go. Presets, you see. I remember Keith Emerson in 1978, and there was this thing. What is that thing? It's our brand new thing. It's a preset machine. I can have 8 presets. Everything else before, remember, anyone who's seen it's the gigantic wall of synthesizers, and there'd be leads going everywhere. All that stuff. And so that's what you've got. And so you have to know about attack, decay, sustain, release. There you go. Now what can happen is that when you're actually dealing with these things, drums by their very nature have very short, but you can hear the that's the release, you see. Now with sustain, if I hit a bell cymbal, goes for a long time. Now this particular cymbal I've got here, I've got a little, I've got fridge magnets on them, you see. Okay, and I've got a very, falls off a cliff, no T cruise. China. Oh. And I've got a little bit of a stacked thing here. The most expensive trash can sound you'd ever have. And there you go. And then this one down here. Lots of wash. There you go. Now when you're dealing with things like this is how it works for you, you see. When you're doing things like Anthony Ceroni's Portraits in Rhythm book, fantastic book, I tend to give solo 1 out of that book to my students who are starting to get into their grade 2 drum set manual. Shameless plugging, Chris. But what it is when you start getting into the open and closed rolls, presses, rudimental notation, all this sort of stuff. So, and what you'll see when you go on, say, YouTube, and you see someone doing one of Anthony Ceroni's solos on YouTube, it's usually some kind of university recital thing, and they're there going like that. And then what happens then is you've got your snare drum where they might be playing in the middle. But then for the lighter parts, you see? But if you turn it around, mallets and snares don't, you can. And now there's the hard mallets, you see, look. There you go. And if I go back to the softer mallets, now I can start working on, I'm just doing a single stroke roll, by the way. There you go. Right, left, right, left, right. Then I'll move it around. Now, I have a little treatise, I suppose, a book called Angles Around the Drums, and it's a well-known little thing. The first person I really went, oh, he's doing angles, was Billy Cobham, and all these incredible things that he could do. And I go, he's doing a triangle with the right hand and a line with the left, like that. So what you've got is, let's just stick to 4. If I just use a star, that means 1 drum. Line is 2. Triangle. The old triangle is 3. a square is for. Hey! And a man's guts to know his limitations.
Man's got to know his limitations.
Dirty Harry. Magnum Force, 1974. There you go. Someone said it to me the other day. I used the Dirty Harry method. What's that? Man's guts to know his limitations. Anyway, what goes on is then you can do a little term called hocketing, where what starts to happen is that hocketing is used in classical music, especially Anton Webern's Off the Planet stuff, which I tend to really like. You've got to be in the mood for it, though. And you can take a melody and split it up between different instruments. Now, the most simplest kind of hocketing is the term divisi, where you might have a constant line of semiquavers. But a trumpet's going, and at some point, if you don't give them a breath, they're going to fall off the perch. So divisi, it's like tag team, you know, that kind of thing. Your turn. So it might be trumpeter one going, and the whole time you might have the pianist just continually doing the line, you see. And you know, that happens quite a bit. I remember, seeing I mentioned Billy Cobham, I remember that being done with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, where they were trading. In jazz, you call it trading fours or trading eights, whatever it might be. But the thing is, when you're actually doing a melodic line, it's like you're passing it on. Now, here I am talking drums. There's my single stroke road. I'll slow it down a bit so you can see it. And what happens if I work with my limitations? Okay, so what happens is, how about I do a square here? Single stroke on the left. Now the only thing I'm going to do is do accents with my left hand. Right hand stays the same. Accent. Doubles. Bring in the feet. Hey, there it is. It turned into a bit of a calypso-y kind of thing there. There you go, you see. So all of a sudden, I'm still just doing a single-stroke roll. But all of a sudden, it's becoming something else. Now, what starts to happen is you can start to bring out an inner melody, that kind of thing. Who remembers Dave Liebman, the saxophone player? Really caught a break when he was playing with Miles Davis in the mid-70s, but he was a fairly regular visitor to Australia in the late 70s into the early 80s during the summer jazz courses at the VCA, which I attended. And what it was he did a solo at Dallas Brooks Hall, I remember, where he was going and it was like he was running arpeggios up and down, but he'd go snap, and he was going snap on a slow melody kind of thing, you know, that kind of stuff. But there was the other thing. And you could think of it like a pianist doing an arpeggio like ostinato, like I did last week. And you're doing that, but then you've got long semi-breathes or something like that with the right hand. And he was doing it with a saxophone. It's quite extraordinary, really. So what I'm going to do, talking about that, I'm going to change the timbre, spelled T-I-M-B-R-E, timbre, the sound of the instrument. Clarinet, the Charlemagne register. I learned that in orchestration. Beauty. So I'm going to go from the snare drum, being a normal, sounding like a tom-tom, turn the snares on, and all of a sudden, what we know and love. There it is. And what I'm going to do is a little number here, which I really quite like playing when I'm talking about angles around the drums and business. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play the square with my right hand, and a triangle with the left. Square. Triangle. And again, I'll do it slow. There it is. Now, because you're doing 4 and 3, what's going on is you have your common denominator. 4 times 3 is 12. So with that, you're playing in a kind of a compound time, 12/8 if you wish, depending on how you write it, but that's how you'd work it. So when you're actually doing that, it starts to lend itself a little bit to minimalism. Philip Glass and Steve Reich, who I've mentioned regularly, they're wonderful composers for drums, really, because of the nature of the instrument, you see, because we're repetitive, you see. And when you're being repetitive and doing the same thing all the time, what starts to happen is that, I'll go back to this for a sec. What starts to happen then is that you'll need your dynamics. Ha! It all comes together. You need your dynamics to create interest. So if I did that, but this time I've got the snares off, and I'm going like that. See, very soft. Piano. Bring it up. Change in threshold. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-ba-ba. There it is. You see. Ha. Better get a wriggle on. Dynamics, I've done it. Timbre, Chris, come on. Star, line, triangle, square, ADSR. Oh, I've actually sort of done it. The vertical and the horizontal, all this business. Now, when I go over to the left-hand side, where I love and leave you. I hope you enjoyed that. That's the left hand. You see, when you're wanting to do things, you've got a little bit of a job in front of you. So if I'm going to put it there, I'll get a bit of wriggle on with my left hand chops in a melodic way. Mixed sticking, I can... Tonic. There you go. And what that is I can just swatting at books like Stick Control by the wonderful George Lawrence Stone, who I mentioned the other week, and getting your mix sticking together, being able to move them, and then, like I said, the on-screen display kind of thing where you're starting to move, doing different things, you see. And then you mix it up, you see. So if I'm sort of going between these two, there's your line. That's a double paradiddle. There it is there. And what starts to happen is there's your line, there's the thing. If I could do two lines. Triangle. Things like that. Hoi! Oh, put the... My name's Chris Quinlan. I won't have this up tonight because I'm off to watch the footy. I love that angry violin player.
Man's got to know his limitations.
It'll be up on beloved Channel 31 in a couple of weeks.
Man's got to know
as
his
show number
limitations.
896.
Man's got to know his limitations.
I hope, if I got it right. Anyway,
Man's got to know his limitations.
The angst of it all.
Man's got to know his limitations. Man's got to know his limitations. Man's got to know his limitations.